If you having
3D printing,
problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems, but
mixing resin in my 3D printer,
ain't one.
We're going to begin with the cones of calibration by TableFlip Foundry.
Ty from TableFlip Foundry.
Ty from TableFlip Foundry.
Massive shout out to Ty from TableFlip Foundry.
Ty, thank you so much. Guys, go check out TableFlip Foundry.
So that was so dumb. Sorry about that. My name is Ty. Welcome to TableFlip Foundry. If you like the cones of calibration or you didn't like the cones of calibration, that's okay. I still have another free resin printing tool to bring you, and I'm really excited to share it with you today. We all have to mix resin in order to properly 3D print, and the mixing process can be a little annoying. You've got to take your vat out and drain it into a bottle and shake the bottle and put everything back, or you have to get one of those silicone spatulas like I do, and I mix everything up, and I'll take a few minutes and stir and stir and stir until it seems properly mixed, and then start my print from there. If you have a lot of printers, that can take a really long time. I have 6 in my little farm, and it can take me half an hour to 40 minutes just to mix them all to get ready. And so there's also the hassle of having to put on gloves and PPE and be around the resin and clean up messes. And I just thought this is like a small pain point. We all go through it, and I don't think we have to. So I set out to come up with a solution, and I'm finally ready to release the TableFlip Auto Mixing Profile. Now, I started off using some creative slicer settings to make a profile work. And recently I was approached by one of our very own community members named Resin, and we were having some, academic discussions about what can we do with the printers and what way can we control the printer, and through that exploration and discussion, I realized that we can actually control these printers outside of the slicer, and Resin and I set out to sort of like experiment, play, test, wrote some code, and came up with something really special for you guys, and I think it's really going to help everybody. So if you have a Chi2 Systems printer, so that's like Elegoo and Frozen use Chi2 Systems, even my OG Photon with the mono upgrade from Chi2 Systems will run this code, then you're going to be able to run a very simple universal G code, and we're going to give you those files today. But if you happen to have, let's say, like an ePax or an Anycubic printer where they don't run those G codes, I still have a solution for you guys. You're not totally out of the loop. It's not as elegant as the G code one, but it does do the exact same thing. And I did spend a lot of time sort of like playing around and getting something figured out for you guys. So everybody, no matter who you are going to be able to figure out how to make your printer keep itself mixed while you're not using it. Let's have a look. Alright, this is as simple as it gets, you guys. All you have to do is select which profile you want, and you take and move that over to your flash disk. It can be in a folder, out of a folder, as long as it's on the flash disk that you put in your 3D printer, you are good to go. In this scenario, we've left our resin for a couple of days. It's separated. We're going to use our spatula to lift up some of the settled pigment on the bottom of the FEP, just to give it some extra help, and then load up our quick mix profile. So we're going to go into the printer, select the file that we are looking to run, and we are off to the races. The printer is going to start off with a default home command, and after that it's going to undertake what I call a deep mix cycle, where it lifts the build plate up and down the entire height of the vat. After that, it's going to undertake a vibration cycle where it agitates the resin at different levels throughout the entire cycle. We're going to run this quick mix for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to slice a file, we're going to get a drink, and then by the time we come back, our resin should be fully mixed and ready to print. This quick mix cycle is to be used if you've left your resin sitting for a few days. It's designed to get you back up and printing with as little effort as possible. I prefer the infinite mix cycle. I run this in between prints. Every time I have a print finished, I start the infinite mix cycle immediately, and then I know my printer is ready to go by the time I'm ready to print again. You'll notice the difference between these two profiles is step 4. In the quick mix profile, the slough and shake cycle is going to lift the build plate out of the vat. It's gonna wiggle around a little bit. It's trying to drain the top of the vat of resin. So it's gonna vibrate and then wait about 20 seconds before it starts over. With the infinite mix cycle, this is our wait period. So you can choose if you wanted to cycle every 10 minutes, 30 minutes, or 60 minutes. I run mine every 30 minutes, and it seems to keep the resin perfectly mixed for as long as I'd like it to. We have created a clever little trick for you here. This profile will mix your resin a few times before automatically starting a print for you. All you have to do is slice a print, label it print.ctb, and put it in the same folder as the mix and print profile. From there, you just hit the mix and print profile on your printer and it will take care of the rest for you. So here's my recommended workflow in my workshop. I already have the infinite mix profile loaded onto every one of my flashcards. I have a second flashcard where I'm slicing my new files, ready to start the next print whenever that is. As soon as I'm finished with the print, I remove the print from the build plate and I put the build plate back in the printer, and I immediately start that infinite mix file. What this will do is ensure that no matter when I'm ready to print again, whether it be 5 minutes or 2 days, when I come back, that resin will be ready to use immediately. No mixing, no spatula, no draining the vat, ready to print right away. So you might be saying at this point, I have an Anycubic printer, or my printer doesn't run G-code. What do I do now? Don't worry, you guys, I got you. We are going to be using our slicer today to create a resin profile in a very unique way, in a way that you would never consider doing it. And this will create a profile. You can create a fast profile, a slow profile, one that runs for a week, one that runs for 20 minutes if you want. I'm going to explain to you all of the settings that I'm changing and why I'm setting them that way. And we're going to do that because not every printer has access to the same settings. And I want you to understand what's taking place and why. So if you have a printer that doesn't have all these settings, you're still going to fully understand what's taking place and be able to make the changes that you need to make for your printer so that you can create your own auto mixing profile. All right, let's have a look at the settings in Lychee. We're going to use the Epax E10 in this case, and we're going to add a new resin. Now, I don't need any of these resins at all. Matter of fact, I don't need this printer brand at all. We're just going to leave everything the way it is, and we're just going to add a new resin. Now up here, I want to start off by labeling our printer. So I want to label our printer, but it's really important that I make something that's very noteworthy. It can be really easy to accidentally select this profile in your slicer when you're trying to slice a normal print. So it's really good to make sure that you're identifying it very clearly so that you don't make that mistake. So we're going to call this the TableFlip Foundry. This is what we're calling the printer. For the name, we're going to call it the Auto Mixing Profile, or just say Auto Mixer. That's fine. And for the color, we're going to call this Long Mix, because we're going to create a profile that does a really long mix. Now, the Epax E10 has 2-stage motion control, and maybe you have something else that doesn't. So I'm going to show you how to do this without 2-stage motion control first, and then at the end we'll turn 2-stage motion control on, and then we'll look at those settings too. Okay, so let's take a look at the settings for the burn-in layers. Our burn-in layers are used as a quick profile. So when we go and run the print, at the beginning of the print cycle, we're going to have a number of times that the build plate will move up and down quickly. Get the resin mixed up right away. If the resin's been sitting for a little while, this will be a way that we can kind of stir it up real quick, and then we start a long-term profile. Now, the number of layers we have, we are identifying the amount of cycles we want that build plate to move up and down. So in this case, I'm going to set it to 20. You can choose how many you want. If you want it to be 100, you can do that. If you want it to be 5, you can do that. Just know this is what I use. 20, I think that's more than enough. Very important to note that for exposure time, we never want the UV light to turn on. This is just a mixing profile. We want no curing cycle whatsoever. So we are going to set the exposure time to 0. Transition layers don't count or don't matter at all for this. And same with light off delay in the burn-in layers. Now, we want to tell the build plate how far to lift in the vat. And in this case, I'm going to do a lift distance of 30 millimeters. That's a little over an inch, we'll say. That should be enough for the build plate to lift, let a lot of resin fill in that area the build plate was, and then push back down and push all that resin around. That's what we're looking for. Now, it's really important to note that our lift and retract speeds need to be the highest we can get them. I'm just going to set them to 250. Your printer, if you set it to 600, your printer is going to cap it somewhere, and that'll be the fastest that it'll allow it to go. I just set mine to 250, seems to work fine. That's it for our burn-in layers. What's going to happen now is the build plate is going to go down in the resin and back up 20 times at the highest speed it can. And it's going to do that immediately, back to back. Down, up, down, up, down, up, with no break. So this is our quick mixing portion of the profile. Let's look at our long-term mixing profile. Layer thickness. Here's where we get to really mess with these settings in a way we normally wouldn't. We're going to set this layer thickness to the lowest our printer will allow, which is going to be 1 micron. We want this because we want the printer, it will still behave like a normal printer. That build plate will still think it's printing layer by layer, and eventually the build plate would be out of the resin and still running the profile. So we want to keep that build plate in the resin, submerged for as long as possible. We can do this by cutting the layer height way, way, way down. Our exposure time is still 0, and our lift distance, just like the other one, is still going to be 30. We want our lift speeds at 250. And light off delay. So here's the magic. Most people won't ever do this, but you change your light off delay to minutes instead of seconds. Now we choose how long we want our printer to wait in between cycles. If we're going to run this profile for a week, let's say, this build plate will go down and up and then wait an amount of time that we identify here before it goes down and up again. We don't need to be constantly mixing up, down, up, down, up, down the entire time. We just need to prevent the resin from ever separating and settling. And we can do this by just dropping the build plate and lifting the build plate up every 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to set this number to 10 minutes. And that's exactly what will take place. The build plate will go down. It will go up. It'll go down, it'll wait 10 minutes, and then it will go back up. And then it'll go down, wait 10 minutes, and then go back up. And so over time, it's going to keep that resin agitated. It'll never get an opportunity to separate because every 10 minutes it's going to be given a little mix. So this is all of our setup. All we have to do is save this, put it on our flash card, run it, and our resin will stay mixed for a really long time. But I do want to show you what 2-stage motion controls look like. So we're going to turn off the light off delay, and we're going to turn on 2-stage motion control. So our settings over here are pretty much the same. All of the settings are the same, but now that we have these new options in 2-stage, just know that we don't need a second stage at all for this. So we can set 0 millimeters to the second stage and 30 millimeters to the first stage. And just out of formality, I changed these to 250 also, but it really doesn't matter. So also, when we switch to this 2-stage motion control and we don't have light off delay, we still need to issue a wait time. And what we're going to do is issue a wait time after lift. We're going to change that to minutes, and we're going to change that to 10. Both of these profiles will essentially function the same. The only difference is that the build plate will lift and then wait 10 minutes in this profile versus the previous one where it would lower and then wait 10 minutes. But functionally, it's identical. There's one last thing we are going to do just as a precaution. We have TableFlip Foundry is the brand of printer. We have a name of our resin, which is the auto mixing long mix, and this is our layer thickness. Now, if we wanted to create a short mix profile, we could go ahead and just create a copy of this one. And then we can call it a short mix profile or a quick mix, whatever. We'll do quick mix. And in this quick mix profile, we can just set this to 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever you want, and then run it that way. And then it will only ever stay in that fast burn and layers section. So this is something you would run for 10 minutes before you ran a print. And this is how you would create a quick mix and a long mix. So, okay, so now we've got our auto mixer selected. We're going to go back to our build plate. Now, out of a precaution, we don't necessarily want an object on our build plate. We don't want our printer to ever think that it's going to be activating the LCD screen for any reason. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this object and we're going to put it off the build plate. Now, as far as the printer is concerned, there's no reason it should ever activate the LCD screen during the auto mixing. But, little known fact, even though this object is off the build plate, the printer or the slicer will still slice its layers. So when we go to estimate printing time with nothing on the build plate, the printing time should be 0, but it's still going to create a long duration print. It's still going to slice these layers even though it's not on the build plate. And this is one of the little tricks that we're going to use in the slicer. So this profile will run for 160 hours. Now, if we want the profile to run longer, we can go in, we can change the wait after lift to 20 minutes if we want, and then save it, and then save it, and then here's our 317 hour mix. So it's not infinite like the G code, but this should be more than enough time for your printer to be working and keeping everything mixed while you're off doing something else until you're ready to print again. When you come back, resin's mixed, ready to go. No getting the spatula, putting on gloves, doing all of that, mixing up your resin. We can just come back to our printer and be ready to go. So that is how you create your own quick mix profile in Lychee in case your printer can't run G code. So that's it. That's the official TableFlip Foundry auto mixing profile. Whether you can run G code or you can't run G code, doesn't matter. You have a solution to your resin separating by sitting around. I do want to address a few things. You might be thinking that you don't want to run your printer 24 hours a day, or that this might create unnecessary wear on your printer. And sure, maybe, and if that's the case, if that's what you think, then please don't use it. That's totally all right. I did kind of do a little math, and I don't think I'm very worried about it. I've run my FDM printers for years on end and never had to replace a motor ever. These NEMA stepper motors, they're quite durable and they last a long time. Also, if you really consider, sometimes you're printing like 12 hours straight doing thousands of layers and your printer's running that with no issue. Now all we're doing is asking it to go up and down a couple of times twice an hour. I really don't think it's going to cause any significant wear to your printer, but that said, I haven't done any long-term testing on this. I have been running mixing profiles on some of my printers for about the last 6 months. I've not seen any ill effect whatsoever, but you use this at your own risk. If you agree with me and you don't think there's going to be any wear on your machine, please run it. If you disagree, that's okay. Just don't run it. Not a big deal. But as far as I'm concerned, I think we're totally safe to run this. Also, we have very little control over how the G code behaves, only that we can issue the commands. And so I just want to, we gotta cover our butts here. If you use these profiles, you know, TableFlip Foundry has no liability. If you use them, you kind of use them at your own risk. This is just something we really wanted to do to bring something new to the table, something that nobody's done before, help you solve a problem that needs to be solved. I've been running them on, I think, 6 different machines, brands and models, with no problems, no hiccups, no anything. Please make sure that you clear your build plate and clear your vat of any solid prints. Do not run any of these profiles if there are prints on your build plate. Do not run any of these profiles if you think there's anything solid inside your vat. You will have a bad day, and you don't want that. So just treat your printer with some respect. Treat it like you always would. Make sure that there's no solid bits in there before you run anything. Besides that, you guys, as far as I can tell, there's no problems at all. I hope that this is really helpful for you. I hope it saves you a little bit more frustration. That is my goal for everything that we put out. We're just trying to make this hobby more enjoyable, less frustrating, more attainable to new people and experienced people alike. And I really hope that these efforts go a long way for you. So please let me know if you like it. Let me know if you have any concerns. Leave me a comment down below. Subscribe if you like this type of content where we're creating new features and exploring, supports or education around 3D printing, anything like that. Please visit us on our Discord. That's discord.gg/TableFlip Foundry. We have a giant community and it is amazing. And if you ever need any help at all, it's literally the nicest place you can go. Nobody is toxic there. Everybody's helpful there, and you're gonna get help. You're not gonna be alone. If you're frustrated with your printer or struggling with some things, you don't have to just fumble around the internet trying to find the answers. We can help you, and I hope you come visit us over there. Also, check out our Twitch, which is twitch.tv/TableFlip Foundry. I teach classes on there occasionally, hoping to do more streams soon, so keep an eye on that. Thank you so much, you guys. I love you very much. Bye.